In the dim chamber of the alien citadel, she sat alone, dressed in ceremonial silk, her hands trembling. Her wedding was never supposed to happen, not after humanity burned her world. Yet, when a human groom stepped into the archway, eyes soft with something dangerously close to love, her breath caught, and time stopped. She didn't rise. She couldn't. Her legs might have obeyed if her heart wasn't a dying star, collapsed in on itself. The room echoed with silence, only broken by the distant hum of the high chandeliers and the ghostly rustle of her dress. It wasn't white. Her people didn't wear white for weddings. Instead, the gown shimmered with faint green and gold, colors once sacred, now symbols of surrender. Lyriel didn't look up when the heavy doors opened. She already knew the sound of human boots. Too sharp. Too proud. But when she heard him pause at the threshold and wait, something inside her stirred. He didn't stomp forward. No arrogance. No forced authority. Just a breath. And then another step. She finally raised her eyes. He stood taller than she expected, framed by arched stone lit with golden firelight. His uniform was ceremonial, black and steel gray, decorated but unassuming. No blaster. No blade. Just him. Cale Thorne. The man who would become her husband. The man who was supposed to be her enemy. You don't have to speak, he said gently, stopping a respectful distance away. His voice was low, calm. No translator buzzed, he spoke her language. Fluently. She arched a brow. But you expect me to listen? To whatever you want to say, he replied. Or not say. She studied him. His jaw was scarred, a thin white line that split near his ear. The kind of mark only battle gave. His hair was a shade of deep brown, a little too long, as if he hadn't cared about grooming. His eyes, though, they held nothing of a soldier. Only weight. The kind of weight people carried when they'd seen too much. You speak like a diplomat, she said coolly. But you wear the skin of a killer. Cale gave the smallest smile, tinged with sorrow. Both can be true. She looked away, biting down the scream that had lived in her throat since the day her planet's sun dimmed in ash and smoke. Humanity hadn't destroyed her world, but they hadn't saved it either. And now, as penance, the Galactic peace accords demanded this union. A binding of bloodlines. A gesture of good faith. A joke. I didn't agree to this, she whispered, her voice cracking. No one asked if I wanted to be given away like an offering. Cale didn't move closer. I know. I didn't agree either. That startled her. Her gaze snapped back to his. I was chosen because I have no family ties to the council. Because I protested the war. Because I saved 12 of your kind when I wasn't supposed to. His tone didn't change. No pride. No challenge. Just truth. So they thought I'd make a good husband. The room went quiet again. Lyriel stood slowly, her gown flowing like water. She approached him, bare feet silent on the marble floor. When she stopped, their faces were only a breath apart. Do you think you'll win my people over with kindness? She asked. No. Do you expect gratitude? No. Then why stand here, pretending to be gentle? Cale exhaled. Because someone has to be. She froze. Those words didn't sound rehearsed. They didn't even sound clever. Just raw. Human. Tired. For the first time, Lyriel noticed the weariness behind his armor. This wasn't a conqueror. This wasn't a savior. He was a man haunted by the same ghosts she carried. She stepped back, heart hammering. This was dangerous. Feeling anything was dangerous. She couldn't afford hope. Not again. A knock echoed from the great doors. The council awaits, a voice called. The public vow must be completed. Lyriel didn't answer. Cale turned, but before he walked, he looked back. Whatever happens out there, he said softly, I won't force you to pretend. She blinked. He offered his hand. It wasn't a command. It wasn't a symbol of victory. It was just a hand. Open. Waiting. Her fingers hovered over his. Suspended in that moment was her entire life, her pain, her choices, her identity. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she let them fall into his. A ripple swept through her chest the moment their skin touched. He didn't squeeze. He didn't pull. He just held. Steady. Silent. Present. And together, hand in hand, they walked through the great doors into the light, watched by two civilizations still unsure if peace was even possible. But for Lyriel, in that single moment, she realized. She wasn't sure anymore if this was the end of her life or the first time she'd ever really begun to live it. The room they gave them was far too big for two people trying not to touch each other. The newly joined chambers, a fusion of Terran steel and Illyrian crystal, felt awkwardly symbolic. One side held clean, rigid lines, dark matte panels, and an earth-made air purifier. The other glowed softly, translucent vines woven through living walls, faintly humming with bioenergy. The marriage was supposed to represent unity, but Lyriel could feel the invisible walls between them more than any physical ones. Kale stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out into the sky where orbiting ships hovered in peace, for now. He had said little since the ceremony. Neither had she. The crowd had watched in stunned silence as she took his hand. The moment played on every screen now, replayed by news outlets, analyzed by diplomats, praised by politicians. But they didn't know. They hadn't seen the tremble in her wrist. They hadn't heard the war in her silence. "I won't sleep in the main chamber," she said, breaking the stillness. "I prefer solitude." "You'll have it," Kale replied without turning around. She moved past him, trailing fingers across the pale blue vines that illuminated her half of the room. The moment they sensed her touch, they bloomed. Living light. "Do all humans stay so quiet?" she asked, not looking at him. "No," he said after a pause. "Only the ones who've seen enough to know words can't fix everything." That made her look back at him. He was still at the window. Still watching the skies. Still that contradiction, gentle in stillness, brutal in history. She stepped closer. "Tell me something." He finally turned. "What? Do you really believe peace is possible between us?" His brow furrowed. "Between humans and Illyrians? Or between you and me?" She didn't answer. He smiled faintly, as if she'd confirmed something. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I believe it's worth trying. That's something." She folded her arms. "Trying leads to failure. Sometimes. But it also leads to more." "More what?" Kale walked slowly toward the center of the room, stopping just within her proximity. "More than hatred. More than pain. More than the past." She hated that his words affected her. Worse, she hated that he meant them. He stepped back. "I cooked. It's probably inedible by Illyrian standards, but I had the AI match your biological palate." "You are cooked. For peace." Despite herself, a ghost of a smile tugged at her lips. He wasn't trying to be charming. That made it worse. He brought out a simple bowl, smooth, oval, laced with silver steam. It smelled like the fields of her childhood. Like home. She blinked rapidly, unsure if it was nostalgia or manipulation. She sat across from him without a word. One spoonful. Then another. Then another. And then her voice cracked. "This is my mother's recipe." "I know," he said. "I read about her. She was a peacekeeper too." The spoon slipped from her fingers. "You studied my mother?" "I wanted to understand you. Not control you." She stood abruptly, the emotion burning too close. "You should know something, Kale." His posture straightened, alert. She paced. "Years ago, before the war ended, I was promised to another. An Illyrian rebel. He died when your side took Atheris." Kale didn't flinch. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," she snapped. "Because today, I received a message." Now he did flinch. She stepped closer, eyes hard. "They say he's alive. Hiding. And that this marriage is a lie. A setup. They say you'll betray me." Silence. "Then, do you believe them?" She hesitated. He took a breath. "Because if you do, I'll help you leave." Her breath hitched. He moved slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal. "There's a shuttle dock beneath the citadel. Fully fueled. I know the codes." "You would defy the council," she whispered. He nodded. If it meant giving you a choice. She stared at him, heart pounding. She could run. She could find out if her old love was alive. She could disappear. But something deeper told her. If she walked away now, she would never know if this man, this human, had come to mean more to her than memory. "Why are you like this?" she asked, voice shaking. "You're supposed to be cruel. Distant. A puppet of war." "I was," he said. "Until I saw what war did to people like you." She blinked. "People like me?" People who were never given the chance to choose. The vines behind her bloomed again, bright this time. Full. The room responded to her heartbeat. So did he. She stepped closer. So did he. Their hands almost touched. But she pulled away. "No," she said, voice low. "Not yet." Cale nodded. No pressure. No expectations. She walked toward the sleeping chamber and paused at the doorway. "Thank you," she said without looking back. "For not being what I feared." Then she left him standing in the quiet, where the only answer was the faint sound of vines opening and closing behind her like a pulse, or a promise. The storm hit without warning. Not a literal one, but a political one shaped by encrypted messages, secret orders, and masked threats. They were being sent off-world. Together. A diplomatic tour, the council claimed, smiling with forced warmth. A show of unity. One ship, one bed, one narrative. Lyriel didn't argue. She just nodded. And when Cale looked to her, silently asking if she was ready, she offered the smallest nod. The shuttle wasn't large. It didn't need to be. The flight would only last a few hours, enough time to travel to the moon city of Iskreth, where the first joint colony had been established. The journey passed in silence at first. Cale piloted. Lyriel watched stars blur past. But eventually, the hum of the engines became a lullaby. And in the quiet, she spoke. He loved the stars. Cale turned slightly. "The rebel," she clarified. "My promised. Before the war. He used to tell me the stars belonged to those who could see past borders." Cale didn't speak. "I wanted to believe him," she whispered. "But in the end, I couldn't see anything through the fire." "You think he's really alive?" Cale asked gently. "I don't know," she admitted. "But the message I received came with a name only he and I knew. A name I never wrote down." He exhaled slowly. "I had a woman," he said. Lyriel blinked, surprised. "Before the war," he went on. "She worked in medicine. Didn't believe in violence. She said if I ever picked up a weapon, I'd never be the same. Was she wrong?" He smiled bitterly. "No. What happened to her?" "She left," he said. "The day I volunteered." A heavy pause filled the space between them. "War doesn't just kill people," she murmured. "It kills futures." Cale looked at her, his gaze heavy. "Then maybe this," he motioned to them, "is a kind of resurrection." She didn't answer. They landed on Iskreth just before the sky turned violet. The colony was quiet, too quiet. A scheduled tour was supposed to greet them, but the platform was empty. Cale's instinct went sharp. Lyriel could feel it, the way his hand hovered near the side of his jacket, even though he carried no weapon. "Stay close," he said. They stepped into the complex. The air was warm, recycled. The hallways were dim, flickering. No signs of life. That's when the doors sealed behind them. Lyriel froze. Cale spun, fists clenched. A voice crackled through the intercom, distorted but familiar. "Hello, Lyriel." Her blood went cold. "Thalen," she whispered. Cale turned sharply. "Is that him?" "Yes," she breathed. The voice continued. "I see you've met your captor." "He's not," she started, then stopped. "Wasn't he?" No, he wasn't. She'd seen his hands tremble when he offered freedom. She'd tasted truth in his silence. Thalen's voice became sharper. "You were promised to me. And now you sit in the lap of a human beast." "She's not sitting," Cale growled. "She's standing beside me." There was a hiss through the speakers. Brave words for a man surrounded. Suddenly, from the shadows, figures emerged, masked, armored in Illyrian rebel gear. At least 7 of them. Kale stepped in front of Lyriel without hesitation. "Don't," she whispered. "They'll kill you." "Maybe," he said. "But not before I put some of them down. You're unarmed." He gave her a lopsided smile. "Not entirely." And then he moved. It was like watching poetry made of violence, graceful, brutal, precise. Kale grabbed a fallen pipe from the floor and swung it with practiced fury. 1, 2 rebels went down. But numbers weren't on his side. A blast struck his side. He grunted, collapsing to his knees. Lyriel screamed, throwing herself over him as another blast fired, only to stop inches from her head as one of the rebels shoved the weapon aside. "Not her," Thalen's voice boomed. "Bring her. Leave the traitor." "No," she hissed, clutching Kale. "You don't get to decide for me anymore." The rebels hesitated. "You fought for freedom, Thalen. But you never gave me mine. You want to tear down the council, but you'd build your own prison in its place. He's poisoned you. He saved me." Kale's eyes fluttered. Blood stained his uniform. "Lyriel," he whispered weakly. She turned to him, cupping his face. "Stay with me. Run. I'm not leaving you." And in that moment, her choice was made. She pressed the emergency beacon on his wrist, hidden beneath his sleeve. Within seconds, the colony shook. Council forces stormed in. The rebels scattered. Lyriel held Kale as medics rushed toward them. But she didn't let go. Hours later, in a sterile recovery room, Kale lay unconscious in a healing pod. Lyriel sat beside him, her fingers interlaced with his. Her heart no longer trembled, it thundered with clarity. She had lost one man to war. But she had found another in peace. One not chosen for her, but chosen by her. As she leaned forward and whispered a poem in her mother's tongue, an old one about lovers across galaxies, Kale stirred. His lips parted. "Did we win?" he rasped. She smiled, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "We survived. That's enough." He reached up with slow, aching effort. And she let him touch her face. This time, she didn't flinch. His fingers brushed her cheek like a question. Lyriel answered it by leaning into the touch. Kale lay still, chest rising slowly in the healing pod. Most of his wounds were stabilized, but the medics said he'd need a few days before walking. Still, his eyes had opened. He was with her. And this time, she wouldn't leave him. The room was quiet, lit in a soft hue designed to soothe recovering patients. A poem from her people played gently in the background, one she had requested, a melody meant for warriors returning home. She sat beside him, holding his hand with both of hers. Not for the cameras. Not for the alliance. Just because she wanted to. "You could have let me go," she whispered. His voice was gravel-soft. "You told me not to." She chuckled through a tear. "You're the first man I've ever known who listens. I'm trying to learn." She leaned closer. "Then learn this, when I thought you'd die back there, it felt like the stars would never shine again." His brows furrowed faintly. "That's poetic." "It's true." He turned his head to look at her directly. "You deserve more than a man broken by war." "I don't need perfection," she said. "I need honesty. I need someone who bleeds with me, not over me." Kale reached for her again, this time stronger. "Then stay." "I already did," she murmured. "And I'm not going anywhere." The council chambers were buzzing the next day. News of the rebel ambush had spread like solar fire, twisting through the media, filtered through agendas. Some accused Kale of staging it to make the Illyrians look unstable. Others called Lyriel compromised, accusing her of betrayal. It didn't matter. She stood in front of them, not as a bride, not as a political pawn, but as a voice. "This union was never meant to be real," she said, addressing the two factions seated in curved rows across from each other. "But it became something no one predicted. It became a choice. My choice." Murmurs filled the hall. "I was born to a world that was burned," she continued. "And I've loved men on both sides of that fire. But one of them tried to own me. The other tried to set me free, even if it meant losing me." She looked toward Kale, who now stood at her side, still bruised but tall. "I choose the man who offered freedom," she said. "And I stand by the peace we swore to build." Not because it's easy, but because we've already bled enough. Silence. Then slow applause, first from the Earth delegation, then the Illyrian elders. It grew. And for the first time since the war ended, there was no shouting. Just agreement. Later that night, they stood alone beneath the stars. No cameras. No armor. No fear. Just two hands reaching for each other. Lyriel wore no crown. No ceremonial veil. Just a simple cloak draped over her shoulders. Cale had traded his uniform for soft linen and bare feet. "Do you think the stars still belong to those who see past borders?" she asked. Cale looked up at the sky. "No," he said softly. "I think they belong to us now." She turned to him. "Then I want to make a vow," she said. "We already did," he replied gently. "That one was for them," she said. "This one's for us." She stepped closer, taking both his hands. "I vow to walk with you across whatever galaxies try to divide us." Cale smiled. "And I vow to never let the war in me touch the love in you." Her throat tightened. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to move. She didn't. Their lips met, not as strangers, not as symbols of reconciliation, but as two souls who had fought their way through grief, betrayal, and silence, into something real. When they parted, her forehead rested against his. "I never thought," she whispered, "that the hand I'd fear would be the one I'd hold on to. And I never thought," he murmured back, "that the one who feared me would be the only one who saw me." Months passed. The world changed quietly, like a tide you don't notice until your feet are already wet. Joint colonies formed. Shared patrols replaced lone sentries. New poetry emerged, human and Illyrian verse intertwined. And in a garden near the edge of the reconstructed capital, two people planted a tree together. Its roots wove both alien biolight and Terran soil, glowing in rhythm with their linked hands. They weren't just a peace treaty anymore. They were a future. A living promise. And every time Cale reached for her hand, Lyriel reached back without hesitation.